Alright, what up museum hacks? So here is the deal. I'm very excited to share with you one of my favorite pieces that I do on my tours, one of my favorite stories I tell in the Met, and for anyone that's not a guide, I'm just going to cut to the chase. So the way I'm going to structure this video is pretty much how I'm going to structure all of them. I'm going to do the piece like we're standing in front of it, and then afterwards I'll give you any like background info or technical info or things like that I'm thinking in the back of my mind when I do this piece. So anyway, you can imagine that we're upstairs in the modern art wing where the Jackson Pollock and Rothko paintings are. We're standing in front of Jackson Pollock's Autumn Rhythm, and before I get going, I just want to let you know that this is a little bit of like a walk to go through this piece, and people don't really know where you're going in the beginning, but I like to milk that because it actually has a huge payoff, so it's totally worth it, and I really just embrace that aspect of it. So anyway, it's past halfway point on our tour probably. We've been going for a while. We're in front of Jackson Pollock's Autumn Rhythm. And I would say to you, so everyone, here we are in front of one of my favorite pieces at the Met. And I really, really love this painting a lot, and I want you to love it also, but I love it for a very particular reason, and I want you to take a little walk with me real quick. So, the United States currently has 16 different intelligence agencies. They employ over 200,000 people overall, and their overall budget is upwards of $75 billion. So the US spends more on its intelligence agencies alone than places like UK or France or Germany even spend on their entire military. Pretty awesome. The NSA recently became the most famous intelligence agency. They're a great example. They themselves are actually bigger than the FBI and CIA combined. Their headquarters is about 7 million square feet, probably more, and they actually use more electricity than the entire city of Annapolis, Maryland, which is the capital, by the way. So pretty ridiculous. They have their own film festival, their own ski trips, their own yacht clubs, and things like that. So quite the chimerical institution. But we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, when the U.S. had only one intelligence agency, which was called the CIA, formerly known as the OSS. It's the late 1940s, and the U.S., and the rest of the world, I guess, had just defeated the Nazis. Awesome, World War II is over, but what else is coming up on America's horizon but the Cold War? U.S., basically, versus communism. And as you probably know, as someone who is even casually acquainted with Western culture, the Cold War was largely fought through propaganda. It was largely a mental war where the West had to convince everyone that our system was way cooler than communism. And we had to teach everyone that communism sucked and that it was the worst, and you totally wanted to be on America's side. So, how's America gonna do that? Well, people in the American government got together and they thought, you know, this is going to be an easy one, dude. America has really awesome music. We have really awesome art. Look at all this stuff going on in New York. The Soviet paintings cannot compete. Artists in, communist Russia had to not paint crazy abstract expressionist stuff. So they were like, this is going to be an easy one. We're going to crush this one out and just send American paintings all over the world and show everyone how cool we are. Easy peasy. Congress agreed. And they funded a bunch of artwork, basically. They pumped a ton of money into the burgeoning American art scene, and the public was not down. If you can look around this room right now, the modern art wing where we're standing, it's a lot of really, really weird stuff. And just like today when people say, oh, my kid could paint this is really lame. Same deal, actually probably way more of the same deal in the late 40s and early 50s. After the government started funding this type of artwork, there was a huge backlash from the press and the public and Congress, and actually even the president himself, President Truman, famously said, if that's art, then I'm a Hottentot. Hottentot was a popular racial slur for someone from Africa at the time. So good job keeping it classy, Harry Truman, and they defunded all the programs. But that's not how the American government rolls. They weren't going to be so easily dissuaded from their plans. So they just said, well, we don't really have to play by the rules necessarily. In fact, there's one branch of the government that really doesn't have to play by the rules, which is the CIA. So the CIA came in and they said, we got this. We know exactly what to do. And what they did was pretty amazing, and it actually, they would do this a lot for their future, and in my opinion, this probably still goes on today, just for the record, but it's well documented that this actually did happen. What they did was, very simple, they set up a bunch of totally, completely fake charities and organizations. They would go to someone in New York who was a socialite and say, hey, do you want to run a foundation that is just pumping money into the burgeoning art scene in New York? They were pretty explicit about what their plans were. And the person said, of course I do. That sounds great. And they said, well, great. All you have to do is sign this paper, and we'll send you the letterhead and send you the envelopes and send you pretty much everything, and you'll become, again, a totally fake foundation that's just a conduit for CIA money. They got these fake foundations to work with real foundations that actually existed. And by working with these two organizations together, having the fake organizations work with real organizations, they were able to pump an absolutely heinous amount of money into the burgeoning art scene in New York. And by the way, this was not just visual art. This has to do with jazz music and lots of other cultural institutions and things like that. We're just focusing on the art portion of it right now. And by doing this, they were able to send these exhibitions of American paintings all around Europe, essentially as propaganda for how awesome the West was and how much communism totally sucked. So, to give you an example, there was a show called The New American Painting, which had works by Rothko and Jackson Pollock and people like that. Well, it had just closed up in New York, and the Tate in London really wanted it. They wanted it a lot, actually, and so did a lot of museums in Europe. The only thing is, these paintings are huge, and they're really, really expensive to ship all the way to Europe and then steward around Europe in a careful fashion. So the Tate had no money, they couldn't afford to bring it over, none of the other European museums could do it. Cue someone named Julius Fleischmann, a New York socialite who came in at the last minute and cut an absolutely massive check to fund this art exhibition going all over Europe. So it was just him, really awesome, except that no one knew, not the museums, not the artists, not the art handlers, not anyone, no one had any idea that all of the money that he gave them was actually CIA money. So the CIA literally paid directly for these exhibitions to go travel all over Europe. So I submit to you, are these paintings lies? Have we been tricked by the CIA? Is that the only reason why abstract art exists? Definitely not. It is really cool of its own right, and without the CIA it probably would be a thing. It's pretty great. But we are also in some way looking at a piece of art that did definitely function as wartime government propaganda, unbeknownst to anyone until about 20 years ago or so, when a former member of the CIA disclosed all of this. So pretty awesome. So now you are privy to a story that, again, pretty much no one in the art world knows. I've really yet to meet someone that's part of the art world that actually knows that story. So that's pretty much how I do the piece. That's pretty much the end. So as for what I'm thinking in my background when I'm doing this piece and things like that, I'm pretty patriotic, but this piece has a little bit of like an anti-government flair to it, I guess. So I don't do this piece with everyone. I only do it if I think the group is definitely going to be down. So frankly, if there's anyone who seems like overly conservative or like politically sensitive or like they're just probably not going to be down, your intuition is probably correct. So I don't do it for everyone, like I said, but for people that you think are going to be down, you're probably right. It is a pretty cool thing to talk about. As for did that actually happen, people will ask you if you do this piece. Yes, that totally happened. People seem incredulous to believe that. It's a pretty big part of like the CIA's secret history that they would fund cultural institutions and programs and things like that. If you get anyone that's really, really incredulous, you can tell them about something called Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA documentedly infiltrated like news outlets and radio programs and things like that. It's very, very well documented that all this stuff did happen. So if you get someone that really doesn't believe you on your tours, I assure you, yes, it is actually true. This actually did happen. As for the ending of the piece, it ends on a little bit of a downer. You can talk about it pretty much however you want. But I like to end it sort of intentionally on a downer, like, yeah, government propaganda, go figure. And I sort of like to play that up as a joke and then go to a piece that's much more lighthearted. So if you have nothing else in the modern art wing, the piece that I talked about before, Chuck Close's Lucas, I also made a video on it, would probably be perfect. And yeah, other than that, if you have any questions or anything like that, just hit me up, let me know. Last thing is I pretty much only do this near the end of my tours. I found that if you do it in the beginning, it's like a little much. You want to have a little bit of rapport with the people that you're with, and then by that point it's really cool to do. But I've tried doing it like 3 or 4 pieces in, and without the right group, they're sort of like, dude, what? That's crazy. And it sort of like upsets the vibe a little bit. So anyway, great piece for like, later in the tours. It's really awesome. And if you get anyone that's like an art nerd or like a museum nerd, they're definitely going to be really, really, really into it. People that are really like art people love this piece because it's something that seems really essential to know about all this art that literally no one knows. Like I said before, all this information was only disclosed in like 1991 or so. So most people really have no idea that this ever happened, even hardcore fans of abstract expressionism. So anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to say to you guys. Let me know if you have any questions or anything like that. Like before, I'll post some docs and links like that to relevant pieces and things like that below. And yeah, let me know if this was helpful or interesting, and I will see you guys later. Thanks.